Jean Hall and welcome to my studio. Today I'm talking about collage, using collage in painting to make artworks. Collage being the art of sticking something down as opposed to painting it on, creating areas of colour or texture using stuck-on materials. People can use fabrics, textiles or even objects stuck on, but today we're going to talk about just using paper. So this little presentation is only about giving ideas of how something could be used to make different effects. Perhaps something that you've never thought of doing before. If you're somebody who likes making art, making pictures, maybe the whole idea of collage, you would think small children do that in a school when they're really young, but actually quite sophisticated art can be made using this method. So this is just a start to give you ideas of using paper. One of the points of using collage would be to give yourself a different way of working, to just explore new ideas, but also sometimes when watercolourists in particular are working, they tend to get very tight and very literal, and to make part of it or all of it with collage breaks up the surface of your image so that you can end up moving around more in the painting and being a bit more loose in your approach. I've got here a few images of pieces of work made mainly with torn up magazines. You can use any kind of paper for this, any kind of paper. No need to buy expensive paper. Most of the stuff that I've used is just lying around. You would know, you would have it in packaging or saved up pieces of paper. These ones are mainly made from magazines. This example was made by just very, very sketchily putting in the image, the house and the trees and the shapes, and then I've used torn up pieces of magazines to stick on and complete the image. I've also used bits of watercolour and bits of paint on top. Now you can see that this is very simply done. This works if you tear the magazine paper and don't cut it, because you get lovely little torn edge that blends in with the next piece of paper. The tearing of the pieces of paper is quite important in my view because it stops the pieces from being limited and shut in by an edge. If you cut them with scissors, they tend to look far more organised and they look far too formal. For instance, if you look at this, is actually a picture of a chair with this girl sitting on it. If you tear out a piece of the chair fabric, you end up with a really interesting piece of fabric, and it has no resemblance to a chair after you've taken it away. So then it can be used in any kind of a picture for any kind of an effect, as long as you have the right kind of colour. This image is an ideal one if you wanted to start off by making a kind of stylised bouquet of flowers. They're pieces of jewellery. In actual fact, the photograph is pieces of jewellery, but if you tore them out, you could then use them as flower images. It's easier to tear them because the cut edge tends to look very sharp and jagged, and if you use a torn edge, it can be used, it's better, it flows into the next colour, and you can use it with paint to the paint will soak into it. So I find that tearing them is far easier. It's quite a good idea to tear out everything you need, or lots of things you need, so that you have a pile of little bits, almost like a pile of little pieces of mosaic before you start, and then you can pick and choose them as you go along. All kinds of images in magazines are really, really useful. Pieces of dresses, pieces of walls, pieces of all kinds of things, and plain colour as well is quite useful, because then you can apply paint on top of that. If you want something very bright and very usable lots of different textures of the same colour. You can even use bits that have text on them, writing letters and words, as long as you use them where you want them to be effective in your piece of work. So those were some ideas about starting to think about using paper collage in your work. Thank you for watching. Next time we'll talk a bit more about using other materials in conjunction with your paper collage.